Okay, I hope you heard that. With
Mm-hmm.
your permission, I'm recording this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll share this. I'll send you a link on YouTube once I upload it. And
Okay.
let me SAS Studio, just click on that. It should pop up the. So what have you, like, how far have you done in SAS? Like, wait, I mean, so I know where to start. So what do you know, what you don't know, and where would you like me to start?
I think we can just start from the very basic. I
Okay,
just use the proc SQL.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so um, SAS, as you know, it's a statistical analytical software, strategic analysis software, and there are so many names to call it, but it's just, it is able to process, it is capable of, um, it is capable of connecting to any database, any type of text file, CSV, delimited file, or any kind of data, and then read it and then convert it into a format that it recognizes, which is generally called as SAS dataset. And it 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 is understood by SAS, but it is not readable by us, by humans. But so it creates a special format, the SAS format. Um, so it can be used as a SAS dataset, or it can also be used like a table. It can be used like a SQL table. You can do those things, and you can run various procs on that dataset to perform different functions. So once it reads the data and into the memory and it creates a SAS dataset, you can pretty much do anything with it. Um, and with that said, uh, SAS can also connect a SAS dataset with a Oracle table or SQL Server, or any other database, relational database, or even Access together. You can do joins. You're comfortable with SQLs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do joins. You can do joins between a SAS dataset, a SQL Server table, and a Oracle table, or mix and match combinations, not a problem. Once SAS reads it, you can pretty much think of it like a table and do anything you want. Or you can also use it like a typical SAS dataset where um, you can write data steps or proc steps. With that said, in SAS, there are only two things that you need to remember. So one is a data step, the other one is a proc step. There's nothing else in between. So any SAS program you take, it'll contain a data step or a proc step. They could be standalone, or they could be embedded within a macro or multiple macros, and macros can call other macros too. But the bottom line is there are only two things in SAS. One is a data set, the other one is a proc.
Mm-hmm.
Data step and a proc step. So two steps in SAS. And as far as um, data types, characters, um, numeric variables, and in terms of the delimited files, it could be CSV, space delimited, pipe delimited, or any other character that we normally use. It can be delimited by that, and you can define the delimiter, and then you can read it. But usually, well, I should say, in most cases, we will not be dealing with, in a well-established organization, you wouldn't be dealing with, delimited files. In rare cases, you might have a PARM file or something in like one-off instance, but usually it'll be an organized relational database, or a SAS mart that you would be reading with. So that would be like kind of a high-level um, usage of, in terms of a ETL structure. That's how it would be used. Of course, with all these procs and statistical procs for GG, like plot and regressions and correlations and different types of tests that we can do. So, I mean, linear logistic regression, all those things are also possible. But on an ETL level, we would be like reading files or tables or data sets and then transforming it and massaging the data and cleaning it up and making it usable and then presenting it to the next stage to load it to the either the data modeling side or reporting side on the data warehouse. That's pretty much how SAS is used.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, once it gets cleaned up and is made usable, um, it gets consumed by other users, either the data side or the modeling people. So which gets used for building models, scoring customers, and then based on which they refine, um, they create campaigns for marketing and things like that. And also in terms of um, trials and in terms of medical uh, angle, it is also used. So they fine tune it based on that, either the composition or whatnot. But anyway, I haven't worked on the medical domain, so I don't want to speak for it as if I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that. So I've worked on the financial area. Now, right now, I'm working on a for a healthcare management company. But other than that, I work for Experian, which is a credit bureau.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. And as far as certification is concerned, there are things that you would be reading, which uh, I don't want to say you'll never use those, but there are things that you'll be reading those that you would only use for this exam. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in most, well, you would rarely use at work. There are things like that that you would,
Mm-hmm.
but you would need to know for the exam. You would need to study it
Mm-hmm.
at least once just to
Mm-hmm.
answer the question. But other than that, in
Mm-hmm.
most cases, um, you would not otherwise use it. So, um, and
I had a
yes,
question. Sorry, before I forget. Um, so you were talking about the ETL process.
yes,
So why SAS? Like, how is it? Why is it better than the other softwares? Like, why would we use SAS for ETL?
it is very easy to code. It is like English. If you know
Mm-hmm.
English, you know half of SAS. So that's the way I see it, and it's easy to. So just to give you a comparison, I'm not sure like at what point you started working in the IT, like in terms of the data consumption, or um, have you heard of COBOL?
I know it's something very old, right?
Yes, but it
Mm-hmm.
still exists in a lot of companies. So IBM owns
Right.
it, and
Mm-hmm.
so let me just give you an example. So um, if you have a program coded in COBOL, and if it is 1,000 lines, um, as per COBOL standards, that's a very small program.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 1,000 lines of SAS code, it is a large program. It is not a small program. So it does a lot of things. So um, just to say, so SAS is more powerful. It can do a lot of things. And that's one reason. And also, it is not just a language. It is not just a ETL tool. I mean, most of uh, my career, I've I've used SAS in ETL. I've
Mm-hmm.
not done much of modeling except for my
Mm-hmm.
doctoral research when I had to
Mm-hmm.
use that. But other than that, I mean, there's not. Uh, so what I'm about to say is like, it can also be used for ETL. It can also be used for modeling. It can also be used
Mm-hmm.
for data visualization. So SAS
Mm-hmm.
Baya has been growing every year for the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is big. I mean, just like you might have heard of Tableau and other visualizations as well. And this is in SAS they have um, SAS Via, and they also have certain integration. avenues, I should say, with Python and with big data and other the recent technologies, I should say. There is also so it has a lot of products. It's a suite. It has so many things around it. It is not just a ETL tool. It is
Mm-hmm.
not just a language. So there are even marts, like entire reporting data marts built out of SAS, so that are used for reporting. So like a data warehouse environment.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the, and I used to work for HSBC. They used it. SAS was big in that shop, and the entire data warehouse environment was also, for reporting. Data was available in SAS marts.
Mm-hmm.
So once production nightly batch finishes, the set of extracts are spit out, and they get converted to SAS marts, and all the reporting for the operations and monitoring and the business and everything. So gets reported out of the SAS marts. So it is also used there, and it is because it is easy. It's easy to
Mm-hmm.
learn.
Mm-hmm.
Once you learn it, you'll just fall in love with it. It is so it's friendly. It is. Uh, I mean, it's not like, again, going back to COBOL example. If you make one error, if you miss a period is part of a syntax in COBOL language. If you miss a period, you would probably get like 100 errors reported in the log.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, if you're starting with it, it'll be like a nightmare. My God, what did I do? I mean, there are 100 errors and 200 errors. You would be like, all you would have done is just miss a period in the code. And
Mm-hmm.
once you go fix it, all 100 has disappeared, and that's how it is. But it's not that bad in SAS. It's pretty um, manageable, and you would be able to work with it easily.
Mm-hmm.
So does that kind of answer your question? So the answer is
Yeah.
easy. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not that
yeah, I
hard.
get it.
Well, there are
Mm-hmm.
also, I mean, even more powerful languages coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I would say language, not like a suit like SAS, but I mean R is another very growing open source powerful language. Um, I would say even powerful than SAS.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to code a proc in SAS to create a graph, or multiple graphs, in R, all you need to do is just one line. One line of
Mm-hmm.
code will create all kinds of graphs over there. So it's very easy to code a graph in R.
Mm-hmm.
So R is more powerful too, and Python and is used for. I mean, it's used for. It's more popular with machine learning and uh,
Mm-hmm.
data uh, data intelligence gathering and artificial intelligence. But I would say it's like, uh, and
I
it
think,
cannot work with big data and stuff. So,
yeah.
well, it depends.
I,
Well, you could argue that.
no, I think even the one of the biggest challenges with SaaS right now is it's expensive, right, compared to R and the other applications.
Well, R is open source. It's
Yeah,
free.
exactly. It's
R is
free.
free, and
SaaS, the
yeah,
licenses are expensive, I guess.
SAS, there is a license, and
Mm-hmm.
it is not just a language. It offers much more than that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, SAS is still in the one of the top 10 items in the
Mm-hmm.
list, so
Mm-hmm.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But it's been there since 1976,
Right.
so about 44 years, 46 years, something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a long time.
Right.
But anyway,
Mm.
so
One other question.
yes.
So you mentioned, I may be like already thinking. I mean, I'm sure you'll be covering this, but the difference between the data step and the proc step.
Yes, in procs, you will run procs. You will run pre-built, or they're provided by SAS, and you run those procs. Well, I think there are also some user-defined procs, which is very high level. I haven't learned one yet. I haven't had a chance to do one yet, but there may be user-defined procs. But usually you just use the proc and run it. I'm not really sure about the user-defined procs, but uh, and also in data steps, you bring in the SAS data set and you do some manipulation with it, your own code, your own transformation with it. So using the different functions and statements in SAS, string operations, math, numerical operations, and any kind of calculations, formulas, assignments, um, um, and to transform to a different type of data set, or mix it, blend it along with something else, or bring in multiple sources into a data step and combine it. um, that SAS data step is good for that. But I mean, you can also argue that, oh, why can't I do a proc SQL and bring in multiple sources and do the join and things like that? What it is also possible, but if it's a flat file, um, as you know, you wouldn't use a proc SQL. In that case, you would bring in through a data step and then do something with it, um, sort it, and then merge it after that, and accomplish the result. So um, I don't believe I don't believe you can use a flat file or a Excel spreadsheet in a SQL unless one of these recent SQL languages can handle that. But I'm not aware of one yet.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't come across. So it has its own strengths. So that's part of the data step. In procs, you use the existing procs and you provide the necessary code that works with the proc to accomplish what you need to accomplish within using that proc. So that's the main difference between data and
What
proc.
what is the equivalent of proc in SQL? I mean, just so I understand it.
Uh, what is the equivalent of?
Proc, like, is there any example that is in SQL that is like a proc in SAS? Like, is it the
Uh,
date? Is it the date commands, the date functions? No, is it? Or
um, a proc. So SQL itself is a proc. So proc SQL, that itself it's a proc. So once you write proc SQL and
mm-hmm,
semicolon, and
mm-hmm,
then you write a statement called quit semicolon. In
mm-hmm,
between these two statements, you
mm-hmm.
can insert your own select star from a
SQL
table
command.
name,
Mm-hmm,
or you can do a join, left join, right join, outer join, inner join,
mm-hmm,
anything or any combinations of those, or even a create table,
mm-hmm,
or you can do an update statement, or even drop a table. You could do that. But once
mm-hmm,
you have proc SQL and then you have the quit statement, you in between these two, you can write
mm-hmm,
your own SQL statements. It could be one, multiple, many. It's like uh, uh, you can think of it like a stored procedure that can
mm-hmm,
be called. A bunch of statements can be called together in one chunk. In this
mm-hmm,
case, you need a proc SQL to have SQL statements in between.
mm-hmm,
Um, oh, with that said, you can only have SQL statements in between these two. You cannot have, for example, like an assignment statement. So if you have a variable v, you cannot say v is equal to today. That is a simple statement. It's not SQL. So
mm-hmm,
you got to have a proc SQL and a quit. You're only allowed to have SQL statements within those two,
mm-hmm,
those two statements. But
mm-hmm,
um, in data steps, again, in data steps, vice versa, you cannot have a SQL statement inside a data step.
mm-hmm,
You're only allowed to use processing statements for the data step, not a SQL. So if you have a need to have a SQL right in the middle of it, what you would do is you would add a run statement before the proc SQL, before the SQL, and you would have the proc SQL statement to have the SQL statement, and then you would start another data step right after that. So you would have a data step, a SQL step, and then a data step. So you would just split it up. But the
mm-hmm,
bottom line is a SQL statement cannot go into a data step, and a normal data step code cannot go inside a proc SQL statement. So it has to be a SQL.
mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
those are basic rules. But so anything else before we get started on it?
Yeah, we can start. That's
All
fine.
right.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
as I said, so the book or the contents of the test, which I believe is still the same, except for some updates of versions SAS 9.4, but there shouldn't be anything much different. You should be able to, once you get the book, let me know if you find something new. As I said before, just make sure that you go through at least one chapter and try to finish that chapter in that day.
Mm-hmm.
When you finish that chapter, also make sure that there is after each chapter there is a quiz section.
Mm-hmm.
In some chapters, you might find that the quiz is a little bit lengthier, but in other cases, it might be just so. For example, chapter one, I'm looking at it. There are only
Mm-hmm.
10 questions. So
Mm-hmm.
even if it takes 1 minute to answer a question, it should only take you like 10 minutes to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you don't know something and you have to go back to the lesson and read that topic or read that section of the book to answer that question. Please make sure go ahead and like you just go there and read that whatever you need to, and then see how that question was answered. So it is so important, and it
Mm-hmm.
will boost your confidence so much when it comes time when time comes to for you to get ready to take the exam.
Mm-hmm.
You will know the answers. So uh,
Mm-hmm.
once you finish reading, please make sure you finish taking the quiz at the end of the chapter, and that's going to really help you.
Okay.
I mean, these things work for me, so I'm uh, I'm hoping it'll work for you too. But
Mm-hmm.
all right, so they start with basic concepts in chapter one, and then referencing files and setting options. They'll talk about different types of files, as I said. When you actually go into the workforce, when you actually get your hands dirty, you won't see that many, that much of coding with files. I mean, there will be some, but not a lot. But it's important to know that. And then chapter three is all editing and debugging SAS programs, which is they're all pretty easy once you do a couple. And then creating list reports. It also includes sorting. Um, and then assigning footnotes and um, other things there for that chapter. And then there's creating SAS data sets from raw data file in the next chapter, fifth one. And sixth is data step processing. Seventh is creating and applying user-defined formats. It's like, phone number, it has the bracket in between for the area code and then a dash. Like social security number, it has a predefined format, things like that. Um, and then eight is creating enhanced list and summary reports. And nine is producing descriptive statistics. And then HTML output, creating and managing variables, reading SAS data sets, that's chapter 12. And that's almost halfway through. And then combining data sets, that's chapter 13. That's when we start combining data sets. So 14 is transforming data with SAS functions. You need to you would have to like, but once you start coding, you will naturally start remembering the functions. So you would need to remember some functions and certain syntax. Uh, uh, like how do I get the first day of the month, using a SAS
Mm-hmm.
function, and how do I
Mm-hmm.
get the first day of last month or the midday of last month or 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago? How do I do that? So all those things you just need to know by memory, but you will get it once you do a couple of programs there. So SAS functions, they're really powerful too. They're really useful. And
Mm-hmm.
you can pretty much get to any date and any year in SAS. That's very friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have processing variables with arrays, reading raw data and fixed fields, reading free format data, reading date and time values. That is the entire chapter. Just reading date and time values, just chapter 19.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 is creating a single observation from multiple records. So 21 is creating multiple observations from a single record. So these are things that you won't be doing very often in your day-to-day work, but it's there. They're gonna be asking questions, and you just need to learn that for at least for the exam.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, I don't know. Reading hierarchical files. I got to go through that. It's been so long. I don't know. I didn't even know what they mean by that. I got to go through that and I'll show it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But um, oh, creating one observation per detailed record, creating one observation per header record. So that's the last chapter actually, reading hierarchical files. After that, you
Mm-hmm.
got an entire list of answer keys for all the chapters, the quiz at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and you might find um, sample tests online. You can use some of the free sample tests, but once you get, I think SAS also allows you um, to probably take some sample tests.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if ProQuest allows you, but you probably need to. But once you register for the exam, that'll be done at ProQuest. But this is basically what you'll be covering for the exam. These are the topics. There may be minor variations that you might see in your new book, but the contents are the same. The language hasn't changed much. It's all intact. And you know, all right. So what I was thinking was I would have this code, coded and run. And if you like, I can send this code to you, or actually, you know what? I'm going to send the recording anyway, so you're going to have it, right? So that'll have everything, the code, the
Mm-hmm.
explanation, and everything. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to chapter 1. All right, so we have some basic. Oh, I have to tell you this. So in this interface, you can see my screen, right, Devi?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You see here libraries on in the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and if you click on my libraries, so you see that I created this, but all these things, maps, there's SAS data, SAS help, everything. These are all provided by SAS.
Mm-hmm.
So in any installation, so if you go to your enterprise guide or at work or PC SAS or anything, so you will see these data sets on your left on under these library names. So these are basically libraries. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a folder, and folder having files in Windows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the folder, you can think of it as a library, and the individual files, they are the data sets. So here we don't call folders, but instead we call libraries. So for example, if I click on this SAS help, the arrow, these are the data sets within the library SAS help. So SAS help you can reference this by SAS help.air, SAS help.aacomp, and all those things, baseball. SAS has provided some data for us to play with and to practice and to learn SAS. So that's the bottom line of it. So SAS has created some data, and they
Mm-hmm.
have stored these data sets in every SAS installation, every distribution. So it's available in mainframe too.
Mm-hmm.
So all these are available for us to use and play and practice. So you can, so for example, class is something that I usually refer to as well. So once I double click, it opens up the data set. So this is what contains in that data set, sashelp.class. That's how we refer that data set. It's in the library SAS help. So it is referred as sashelp.class. So once I double click that on the GUI, it opens up the rows and it gives me the total and the number of columns. And these are the headers, and these are the record or the row numbers, observation numbers. And as it just displays it like a table.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a SAS data set. So the same thing, I can go here and I can print it like proc print data is equal to SAS help dot class. And this is, yeah, I hit F3 and it prints the same thing, but we just printed it using a code. Is this too small or are you able to see this?
I can see it.
Okay, so it basically prints it out, and here it's called OBS, which stands for observation number, or in SQL we'll call it row number.
Mm-hmm.
But here in SAS it's called the observation. So when it prints the log, you will see that it says 19 observations. So it doesn't say records, it doesn't say rows, it says observations. So this is the data set, this is the library, and these are the observations in that data set, and this is the proc. So usually, or I should say, it is a good practice to have a run statement after every proc statement and every data statement, except um, except when I have, if I do that, I don't do a run. Instead, I do a quit. If it's a proc SQL, I do a quit, and the same data printed through the proc SQL. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did was I embedded the SQL statement between proc SQL and quit. So, and it again, it gives a slightly different type of a log in the previous step. Let me run both of those steps. Okay, it did not run that. I was hoping it would run both. Hold on, let me unselect that.
Let's select both.
Okay, so in the log,
Mm-hmm.
here it said observations for the proc print, but in the proc
Mm-hmm.
SQL, it did not do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
What what is that data in the proc print data? That data, is it
this one,
variable? Yeah.
this one.
Uh, no, the data, the word itself, data, where it says
It's
yeah.
part of the syntax. So you're saying to execute this procedure, use this as the data source. That's what you're
Okay.
saying.
The data. Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. So it's the
this,
data source. Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is the data source for
Mm-hmm.
executing this proc, and this is part of the syntax. Data is equal to,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
it's part of the syntax. And yep, we saw all these things here. Um, a SAS program does not have to have a data step. A SAS program does not have to have a proc step. Does that make sense? A SAS
Mm-hmm.
program can only consist of all data steps, absolutely no proc SQL proc steps.
Mm-hmm.
And also a SAS program can only contain proc steps. It doesn't have to have data steps. So it is possible. I'm just saying there's no rule in SAS that says a program has to have a data step and a proc step. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't say that. Um, well, I mean, if it is also possible for a SAS program not to have a proc step or a data step, well, I mean, then what is the use, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you could also ask that. I mean, there's well, you'll have to think of a unique usage where you don't need to have a proc step or a data step. So um, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like I mean I can't think of a logical reason why there would be a program with absolutely no proc steps and data steps, but it is possible. I mean, all you would do is have a set of, I mean, it would be part of a program. I wouldn't say it's a program by itself, but think of something like, okay, let's say this is the, oh, by the way, a slash and a star is the beginning of a comment. So anything that you don't want to run,
Mhm.
you would encapsulate between a slash and a star, and
Mhm.
then ending with a star and a slash. This would, any lines that you have here, they will not be executed.
Mhm.
So anything after the slash here, this will be executed, but not before, not within those two, you know, a slash and a star and a star and a slash. So
Mhm.
it doesn't have to begin with in position one. It can be here, and then this can be ending here. Doesn't matter. Anything
Mhm.
here before that, it'll not be executed. So it's encapsulated by this.
Mhm.
So that's something I wanted to tell you. And also, if you need to comment, um, oh, this is also a comment. This line is also a comment, and you can end it with a semicolon, and that
Mhm.
line is a comment. It ends
Mhm.
over there. And I don't do that comment at all, ever. I always use a slash star and a star slash. I don't, that's my personal preference and style. I don't like that comment because uh, it has limited functionality. It can just comment one line.
Mhm.
So you need to put a star for each line, and it's inefficient, basically. So if you want to comment out these lines, so in other words, if I want to comment everything, I would just do, I would select the code, and I would press the control key and a forward slash key. It'll automatically comment all those lines.
Mhm.
And if I want to remove those comments, again, I select those and whoops, hold on. Oh, it doesn't. Okay. In EG, you'll have to do a control shift and a forward slash. But here in Studio, you just need to do control and a forward slash. It uncomments those lines.
Mhm.
So if you have like a large section of code and if you want to comment them, you can just select them and hit those keys and it'll comment those for you in a second. So you
Mhm.
don't have to go line by line and comment those. Anyway,
Mhm.
I mean, you understand what a comment is, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Uh, oh yeah. So I was talking about a program not having to have uh, a proc step and another program not having to have a data step. It can be full of proc steps or it can be full of data steps. One doesn't need the other. And it is also possible that you don't need to have either proc or data step. So it can be comprised of something like, so let's say let var1 is equal to Sam, and then you can just say, so you can have 5 lines here, and you can say var2, var3, 4, and 5. You just created 5 variables, and then you can say Tom, and then Tim, and you can say Pam, and then you can say Jam. So these are 5 macro variables created. And if you have another 5 more variables created, they don't have to be in a proc step or a data step. They're just variables. They are created within those, lines of code. And what do? They don't do anything. They just create those variables, and they're not used anywhere. And they're not just. Let me see. Maybe. Um, Actually, I don't think this will work, but I can also do this. There's a statement called global, which makes all those variables available to um, uh, other macros outside um, the current macro. If the current code is in a macro, you have these two statements here. Um, Let me see if this will work. But let me see. Okay, so okay, it does work. So I can have a put statement well, person put, I can have a global statement, I can have let statements. Um, they don't do anything. So, and then I can also do this. So I can say, uh, I can code a macro statement. I mean, this is just to prove that I can have some dumb code that doesn't do anything, and it doesn't have to have a data step or a proc step. That's all I'm trying to show you.
Mm-hmm.
It can do macro test one, you can say that, and then you can have all this code, and then you can say and test one, and you can have all these lines of code within this, and this entire thing can be in a program, and it doesn't do anything. Well, it does define those macro variables, and it makes them as as global variables, and then it prints one of the values here, and then it creates a macro called test one, and it has all these variables within that test one macro. And you can have another macro called test two and do another set of statements too. But the bottom line is there's no data step, there's no proc step in this code. And if you have these lines in a program, it is a SAS program. What did it do? It created macro variables, it made them global, it printed one of those, and it also created a macro named test one. This is a macro. And you might ask, how can this be useful and why would this be used? So uh, I would say, I don't know, we will call this Z, 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 Z. So they are all different variables now. So Z, Z, Z here, and these are different variables. And the ones that are created here are different variables. So we have created 10 different variables, and this entire code can be part of another SAS program, which is which can bring this code into that code, like include include, and then it can give this location. So if it is in, I don't know, if it's saved in like C drive or something else, I don't know, folder one slash folder two, and then you can call this pgm1.sas. Let's say this is, let's say this is where this program is saved. All right. If you save this over there, and if you can bring all those lines of code into another program using this one line. So just having this one line will bring everything into that program. Then it became part of that program. And maybe in that program, all these variables are used somehow.
So,
Did I lose you?
no, I'm here. Hello?
No, I mean, like, did I
Oh, no,
lose you like
no, no, no,
logically?
no, no. I wanted to ask dot SAS, that is, it's a data set file, right? So it doesn't, can it contain code?
No,
Like,
this is not a data set. This,
uh,
this is not a
okay.
data set. This is what contains
Mm-hmm.
this.
But so that is just the code, right? The first, the variables that we are declaring and the macro.
The highlighted
So
lines are part of
yeah,
the code.
yes, part of the code. So like, okay, so now this, what the coding that we have done here, if you would save this file, it would be a .sas file.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay,
So
okay, I
these
see.
things here, as you see, these are .sas files. So for example, let me save this, and it will prompt, um, let me call it, maybe I'll put today's date, 7/15. Actually, I don't know if too many dots would confuse, so I'll keep it
Hmm.
very distinct. 7/15/2021. I'll say save. Come on. Why? Oh, BGM. Okay. Save. What's the problem? Okay. So I had to double click that. So now this is a code, right? So let me take this statement out, And what I'll do is I'll create another one just to show you what's happening here. So let me put that over here. And I don't have any other code in this program.
Mm-hmm.
Let me save this. Where did it go? I will say, let's save this. So this program only has this one line of code,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to, let me see, files, PGM. And if I look at, yeah, this one, uh, properties, it's going to show me this. So let me copy this, close. Instead of C drive, I'm plugging in the actual location. And let me save this, and I'll just run this code. And let me look at the log. That one line, oh, something happened here. Oh, that code still has it? No, it did not. What's the problem? Um, what is it showing? Error. I don't know where this is getting it from. We don't have that anymore. We removed it. Oh, you know what? Probably it was not saved. Okay, I need to save
Mm-hmm.
it. Oh, it was saved. Close it. Code. Uh, yeah, there's nothing there. Save code. Okay, there's no error. It was
Mm-hmm.
probably the old buffer which we did not save. So all I have, as you can see, is this one line of code. I don't have anything else. If you look at the code, there's only one line. But
Mm-hmm.
I do have an include statement that says, go here and get this program.
So, so the um, so the code is in the .sas file. What about the table, the data set? Is that also in .sas?
The table is being referenced here using the libname and the dataset name. So this is already defined within SAS, the environment. If it is
Mm-hmm.
a user-defined library, then we will have to define what that is. This is a SAS dataset, as I told you. Once a SAS creates a dataset, it recognizes it. It
Mm-hmm.
knows what it is. It knows where it is. It knows how to read it and how to manipulate it. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a SAS dataset. So all we need to do is just point it, say
Mm-hmm.
which library it is, and which dataset name it is. And
Mm-hmm.
we just pointed here, and then we pointed here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, these lines of code, they don't have any references to it. So the way I would call this macro, I mean, I'm just getting ahead here, but I just wanted, since we are here, I just wanted to show it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say test one. I don't even need a semicolon here. I just need a
Mm-hmm.
test one, and that's it. It calls a macro named with this macro. So the very first character
Mm-hmm.
is a percent. That means it is a call. It is related to a macro. Somehow it is related to a macro. And the
Mm-hmm.
very next alphabet, it's not the very next word, the
Mm-hmm.
string is not a macro or a mend.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a let or a put or a global. It
Mm-hmm.
is a name which is not a SAS keyword. That's the
Mm-hmm.
right word to say. So
Mm-hmm.
so it knows that this is a macro name,
Right.
and it will look for any macros that it recognizes. So since we already have it defined before calling this macro, it knows that, oh, I just read a macro named macro test, it was defined to me. So it recognizes that, and then it just calls it.
Okay.
That's all it
Uh,
does.
okay.
There's
And
this
what?
code doesn't do anything useful other than,
Just calling it. Yeah.
just declaring the variables and just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. The difference between the put and so when we are in proc, we use the print to display data. What
Yes.
is that put for?
Okay.
Is it?
Good. Very good question. Um, so in this case, yeah, this is what you're referring to, right? So
Mm-hmm.
here we had a print.
Mm-hmm.
It prints this data source, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have defined the data source, and the
Mm-hmm.
name of the data source is this, and we are feeding this to this proc, and it prints everything here. So we have not given any other filter criteria here. We have just said proc print, this is the data source. Don't do anything else, just print everything. So as
Mm-hmm.
we saw here, it had like uh, what is it like so many observations there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it printed out all those observations there, and there were 19 observations in that data set, sashelp.class. It printed everything. But here, what we did was we said put, and then we did not have a data step or anything like that. In case of a macro, as soon as it saw the percent, SAS knows this is not a data step, this is not a proc step, this has got something to do with a macro. And the percent sign indicates, to the macro processor that's saying that, hey, this is a macro, so it looks for what comes after that. This was a put, which is a SAS keyword.
Mm-hmm.
Since it had a percent, it is a macro keyword in SAS.
Mm-hmm.
So put statement is nothing but show. It's like a show or print. Print what? Print this. So
Mm-hmm.
um, every macro variable in SAS will be invoked with a ampersand in the beginning of the name. So here we have var1, var2, all every. So if you want to refer to this variable, you would say ampersand followed by var5. So that's how you would refer this variable. And let me go one step beyond. If let's say if you want to say var1 and var5, right? var1 is Sam and var5 is Jam. So you want to say Sam Jam. Um, the right way to do would be have a period right after that, and then you want to say var5, and this is the right way to do it. I would say anytime you have a macro variable referred in your program, always it is a good practice to finish that with a period. So when would it be a problem? Okay, so we know that you asked me a question about this, right? Class, sashelp.class. See, there is a period here
Mm-hmm.
that delineates between the library name and the uh, uh, dataset name, right? So you cannot say SAS help space class. It will not recognize that. It will throw an error. So there has to be a period, and it cannot have a word like this, SAS help class. Again, that doesn't recognize that. You have to split that up with a period. And even this is not recognized. It has to be right next to it. So the library name, which is SAS help, and the dataset name class, which is right, it should be right next to it. This is the proper way of referencing, like, referring or pointing to a dataset within a library. So now going back to this, why did we have var1 dot ampersand var5 dot. So um, we wanted to have this value. In this case, var1 was Sam, and then we had var5. So let's run this so that way you can actually see it. So it had Sam and Jam, right? So let me do one other thing. Let me take this out. We don't have um, we don't have the. Oh, I should also do here actually. This is the main value
Mm-hmm.
because we're printing it from this macro, which is not the z variable, which is the regular variable. So we
Mm-hmm.
should be pointing to. Okay, now we don't have any other quotation marks for each of those. If we call this, what is it? What happened?
There's a semicolon missing, I think.
Dummy keyword appears let. Oh, did we?
The Tom does not have a semicolon. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. So let's run this again. So we had no space here, but if this was a data set, right? If Sam
Mm-hmm.
was a library and Jam
Mm-hmm.
was the data set within Sam, so let's say, for example, where input demo xjpt. Okay, let me take this. This might be a good properties. I know we're not doing by the sequence, but let me, since you're in the groove to understand that part, I'll just, this is a statement, a keyword in SAS to define a location where
Mm-hmm.
you're going to save, let's say, my SAS data sets. Actually, it cannot be this big. It has to be my SAS D, my SAS 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, my SAS dat. I think it can only handle 8 characters. Um, let me go here, semicolon. So what I did here is that I'm defining to SAS that this location has SAS datasets, and I want SAS to understand this location by means of this my SAS dat, which is the library reference, libref. So this is the library location. This is the library reference. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the libname keyword that defines this. So if I just take this statement and run it, so it says libref mysas dat was successfully assigned as follows. This is the physical location and name, and it
Mm-hmm.
was, it says it's a V9, and that's a location. It didn't do anything else, but now SAS, if you refer mysas dat, it knows what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like saying SAS help. It knows SAS help. Now it also knows my SAS dat. So what you can do is you can take this and let's say var1.sam, let's say data my SAS dat, and then you're going to say var1, and then let's say you have var5. Can I ask you a question now?
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between these 3 variables and what you see below here within the test 1? Does anything strike to you?
Between these five variables and the ones that are in the macro,
That are here and that are here?
the let is missing. It is not.
Right. Let is missing. Yes, that's an important factor. And
Mm-hmm.
also logically, how are they different? This is within a macro, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
then this is within a data step.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna create. So let's say I say my SAS dat dot. We were about to create what? Yeah, my SAS dat dot data. So we're creating a data set called mysas dot data, or it doesn't have to be data. We can call it jam, just like we had here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the name of the data set. So if we run this code and watch this here, inside the input folder, that we
Mm-hmm.
only have demo underscore j dot xpt. So an export file, whatever that is. So it's not related to what we did, but there's
Mm-hmm.
no other entry here. But
Mm-hmm.
as soon as we run this,
Mm-hmm.
so now we have an entry here called jam.sas7b dat.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's showing nulls. There's nothing here. And okay, and here, if we do var1, var2, var3, var4, and var5, dollar car 3, size 3. What we are introducing now is that dollar indicates a character type, and dollar char 3 is showing the length of 3 bytes, and we only show 3 bytes because this one has like 3 um, 3 bytes in this name here. We have not chosen anything larger than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm inserting these 5 variables. They're not 5 rows. They're
Mm-hmm.
5 variables into that data set. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create that data set. Oh, there's a problem here. Oh, code. We're defining. Let's see if it goes through now. Why? What is the problem? So here it shows it had one observation. It's not 5, it's just one observation, which is one record, one row. And it
Mm-hmm.
had 5 variables. And the variables are the var1, var2, var3, var4, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
And in the print, these are the values that are held by those variables.
Mm-hmm.
And now this, even though it's one record, it's also a table.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a select star and it'll show these as a table. And the point is here, this is the data set and this is the library.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, going back to this example,
Mm-hmm.
uh, if let's say var1 is going to be my SAS dat, and let's say we change this to, let's say my SAS dat, right? Let's say we have that, and var5 is, we already know that it's jam, right? We already have jam there. Now, if we want to do, like say, for example, if we want to print this data set, let's say var1, var5. Tell me if this is too much. I will change that and we'll go back to what's there in the book. But since we are talking about that topic, I just wanted to show you the significance of having this. If we were to create the reference my SAS data, my SAS dat.jam, we would have to insert another period here. That was my point. Because this tells SAS that that macro variable ends over there, and
Mm-hmm.
this macro variable ends over here, and
Mm-hmm.
this is an extra period that is part of this reference here. So bottom line, let me run this so you see what's happening. So my SAS dot jam, see that this dot,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't insert this extra dot, it won't print here. It'll just be concatenated together, my SAS dot jam. So having a period is important. Anytime you have like a reference to a macro variable, always end it with a dot.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good practice, um, and it will be significant when you use it like this. So we can look at this later because when we go to other lessons, something like proc print um, data is equal to, instead of saying okay, let me show this and then I'll go to the other one. That way it won't be too much. Okay, all I'm trying to do is we already created the data set right here. So we have defined my SAS dat, and this is a jam, and we are printing it here using that reference, right? So we have created this data set, we are printing it here. So I'm going to just run the two lines. We have this printed, right? The same, the same thing can also be referenced using this because we know we already printed that value. Do you remember
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yes.
We just, I should take this, put it here right next to it. If I run that code, we know we have this value. I can
Mm-hmm.
also refer it by just saying this. So going back here, oops, I can copy that
Mm-hmm.
and I can put it instead of my SAS.jam, I can also refer it like this, and I can run these two lines. And let's see, we have the same output. And if you look at the log, it'll be clear that actually it did not print. So, okay, there are a couple of options we need to say for it to show that. That are specific to macros to tell SAS, hey, don't just run it, also show me what you're doing. So these are the options there. So options, logic, and print, gen. We'll do this and rerun the same two lines, go to the log, and now you see that these two lines were generated. Macro variable var1 resolves to my SAS dat,
Mm-hmm.
and macro variable var5 resolves to jam. So this became my SAS dat and this became jam. So we got the actual dataset name, mysasdat.jam, and it read one observation from that dataset and it printed it here, which is visible here.
I see.
Did I confuse you? Is there anything that you want me to repeat or explain better?
Um, I
Where
will.
did I lose you? Where did I lose you?
Um, no, I think I was following you, but yeah, I would just when you send me the recording, I'll revisit it once
Okay.
again.
All right.
Yeah, and then yeah, if I then again if I have some questions, I think
Okay.
I
All
can
right.
ask.
No problem.
Yeah.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. So um, what else? Uh, the I mean, we're going to be covering these things later, but I mean, macros are technically, if you want to get into macros, I mean, of course, there will be basic things that you would need to know when you go for the base examination, but most of the macros are only handled in the advanced certification, so you don't need to worry about a lot. But I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to show you that, there can be a program with no data step, no proc step, or just data steps and just proc steps. One doesn't depend on the other, one doesn't need the other, and also you can just have like macro statements in one program completely, a
Mm-hmm.
set of SAS code, and that can be called within another macro. And also you need to have the periods, after the macro variables.
Mhm.
That is a good practice, and also it would be imperative to have them if there is a situation like this where you need to reference a lib name and a dataset name, and you need to string them together to refer it like this, or like this, using macro variables. So those are kind of important to remember. And you can also, well, this is not right. You can also define a location um, where SAS can access, and define it as a libref or library reference name. And then later you can use it for reading, writing data sets. In this case, we have created a data set into this library,
Mhm.
and this is the location of the library. And when you do, oh yeah, we should do the basic stuff. Um, I can't I can't leave without showing this. This, I think, is, I'm surprised it's not showing up on the first chapter. Hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, it talks about, yeah, descriptor portion. Okay. So there's one thing you need to know, as we are in the first day. We did data step, we did a proc print. Um, there's also this, uh, and actually, all right. So actually, we'll see this first, and then we'll go to that one, so you know the difference. Okay. This prints the metadata of the data set that you provide here after the keyword data, right? So
Mhm.
it just tells you about this data set,
Mhm.
and it has to be a SAS data set. It cannot be a file, it cannot be anything else. So it needs to be a SAS data set, or it needs to be defined in a lib name to SAS. So it could be a SQL database, uh, it could be MS SQL, or it could be Oracle, but it needs to be defined as a, this needs to be defined as a lib name with a libref statement.
Mhm.
And all the tables inside them can be shown here, and you can print the metadata for those. But in case of external databases, it won't give you the same level of information as a SAS data set. So let's look at this so you'll get an idea. So you've seen this before, or
Mhm.
you're familiar with this?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, is there anything that you'd like me to explain here or no?
Well, I have only used it to look at the observations just to see that
Okay.
it's not zero if
Yeah.
it's looking at something. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically gives, in this case, we only have one record or one row.
Mhm.
So it just
Right.
says one, but usually it'll be in millions. And, when you go real
Mhm.
time, and variables, you may have any number of variables. So depending on the table size or the data set size, it just shows you the number of SAS variables inside that data set.
Mhm.
And in some cases, they also, in some SAS smarts, they also create indexes, and it'll show you, indexed on what. I mean, like how many are there. It won't
Mhm.
show you what here, but it'll show you. There is an option for uh, there's an option to show the indexes as well.
Mhm.
Um,
So we
but
can build indexes in
yeah, of course.
faster. Okay.
Yes, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And is it the same purpose, just to
Speed
improve the
up.
performance of the
Yep.
query? Okay. Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yep. You can also have like simple indexes, complex indexes. So more than one column is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And you can do
Mhm.
that. In observation length, 15, deleted 0 compared. So these things. So mostly we will use these first few. And
Mhm.
this, of course, is a fully qualified uh, dataset name. As
Mhm.
I said, this refers to the library, and this refers
Mhm.
to the actual dataset. And what's
Mhm.
a member type? It could be data, it could be index, it could be uh, a catalog. It could be, I mean, it could be a few other types, but usually we're interested in data. And it says what version, engine, when it was created, when it was modified, and also if it's a protect. I mean, we usually don't do much with these things. Just know that it's there, um, but we usually don't do much there. And it shows the engine, like where it is installed. So this SAS Studio is installed on top of or uh, installed on a Linux server. So that's basically what
Mm-hmm.
show where it is. And if it's mainframe, it'll show you the installation over there. So UTF-8 is a common encoding, but these things, just know what they are. I don't know about the, what the 131072 means. It's the page size. That's what it says. So I don't know anything more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't want to pretend it as if I know that. These max observations per page. So I guess it's the capacity. Oh, this one. Um, this is the if you go back here, you probably will recognize that. See this location there? And it
Mm-hmm.
is the same location over here. So the file name, that's the location, that's the lib name
Mm-hmm.
we defined,
Mm-hmm.
and it is
So
as, oh,
let
always,
me try.
and this is another thing. So
Mm-hmm.
if if you're if you're defining a SAS data set, it will, if you look at it, it will have the extension SAS7B dat. So if you just look at that file, it will be a SAS7. So as you see here, you see jam dot SAS7B dat. So SAS, the extension dot SAS7B dat tells you that it is a SAS dataset. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why they call it SAS7B dat, but that's what SAS uses. I just know that SAS uses SAS7B dat as the extension. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
is it not 8? Is it not 9? I have no idea. But that's how a typical, that's how all SAS datasets look like, and they are called SAS7B dat. So um, if you're looking at a Windows EG, or the Studio, or even University Edition, even um, on the Unix platform, Unix SAS, they will all have this. But when you go on the mainframe, you will see that they're like, it's a .SAS, dot data. Either it's a dot data or dot whatever, dot jam or something like that. It won't have another SAS7 at there. And that's how it is, and I don't know why. So on the mainframe, I'm talking about OS 390. So that's one difference that it probably will never come up in a question. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's good to know that you need to remember this though. You know,
Yeah.
uh, if they give you a few extensions, SAS7B, that is what you want to pick. That
Mm-hmm.
identifies that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's Linux. Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The read write permissions. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because it's Linux, it's showing the permissions as it's set over there.
Mm-hmm.
And owner name, and we got nothing to do with these things. So they're just
Mm-hmm.
there. And below that,
Can
this is
I?
useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Can I mean, maybe we don't have to cover it today, but is it possible that like can we like use some of this information, like the observations, take it from this file and use it somewhere else?
Yeah, actually, um, there are a few ways you can use. There's also um, there's a special type of query that you can do. It's called it's against something called dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
So you can query the metadata. So you can find out
Mm-hmm.
the column names and all the details and the types and the table names and everything else. So using the metadata that's stored within the dictionary. the SAS dictionary.
Mhm.
So you could do that, and we will show some examples. So I've also published some papers on dictionary
Mhm.
tables there. So
Mhm.
it's on it's online. It's also in the CISA conferences. So there are at least like 2, 3 papers that I published. So they're
Mhm.
very useful,
Mhm.
especially um, let's say you have 2 different or 3 different data sets in your company, and you wanted to know how how one data set is different. I mean, I don't mean the data. I don't mean like you can do proc data sets, or you proc compare and you can compare the data sets, but I mean the metadata. Like you don't want all kinds of additional prints there. You just want to
Mhm.
know what's the difference. If there is a name, if there is a if you have 100 variables on one data set, and if you have 105 variables in another data set,
Mhm.
you don't want to go line by line and finding out which one's different. You just want to
Mhm.
know, just run a code, and you want to know which are the 5 differences, and which ones are here, not here, and which ones are here, not here, and which ones are
Mhm.
the common ones. You just want
Mhm.
this printed in a very sweet, like short list, so you can see what it is immediately. And if there are differences in variable types, you want to know what the differences are. So it should
Mhm.
be quick. And when you look at proc compare, it prints like, I don't know, so many pages. You got to scroll through, find out, whatnot. So usually when we look at it, we want to know, okay, what's the difference between these two, and how are they different? So the macros that I've coded in those papers, it'll help you. You just run those macros, and it'll tell
Mhm.
you what the differences are right away. And exactly, it uses what you just asked, which is all the metadata that's
Mhm.
stored in the dictionary table,
Mhm.
which is a special table that stores all the metadata of the data sets that we use.
Okay.
So yes, you can. So not only the number of observations, you can also query the columns, um, the data types of the columns, and even the lengths of those, and if there are any other um, types related to that table, like for example, if there are indexes, or if there are catalogs, if there are formats. There are so many things that you possibly can do that, can query that. And if there is the index should show that if there's a key there. But yes, definitely, yes, you can leverage that. And also you can also do a simple count star. If you do a proc SQL simple count star, it should tell you the total number of records in the table, right? So that
Mhm.
would be
Yes.
quick too. So that's
Yes.
another easy way to find out how many records are there. Or uh, if it is a SAS data set, just by running proc contents will print that out. But if it's a externally defined library, like for example, as I said, if it is a MS SQL library, which is not natively defined here and linked to SAS, but you are bringing in using the server name, user ID, password, and things like that. You specify those params. That means you can you can read those tables, but you cannot do, well, you can do proc counts, but all these things will be nulls. You won't have any numbers there. You'll just have a
Mhm.
dot for
I
this
see.
observations, dot for a variable. So in those cases, you would
Mhm.
the easiest thing would be to just do select count star from whatever table you want, and it'll
Mhm.
just do a quick count and print it for you. So that
Right.
would be the anyway. So proc contents is, that's something that you definitely need to be comfortable with. And going back to, so I did not show that here, so you probably, well, let's see. Uh, yeah, okay. So I've given var1, var5, var2, 3, and 4, right?
Mhm.
So if you look, if I add this option, Eh, it didn't do that. It says in creation order. How is it in creation order? That's not right. Oh, okay. Let me let me take these out and put them in at the end. In bar one, I'll take that out. I'll even take this out and put it at the end. Okay, so we have messed up a little bit here. So if I run that, uh, intentionally I've changed the order, and as you see, 4, 5, 2, 3, and 1, right? So if I run this old code, this might be a possible question. Come on. All right, you see that, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
printed in alphabetical order, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like sorted by alphabetical order, var 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, if I want to know, however, the table was defined or the data set was defined,
Mm-hmm.
if I do that, it'll tell you however it was defined initially when it was created. It says variables in creation order, not alphabetical order.
I
So this is
see.
how it was created. It shows 4 first, 5, 2, 3, and 1.
So on its own, SAS arranges it in the alphabetical order.
Sorts it,
Yeah, sorts it. Mm-hmm.
sorts it. And adding this option gives you the exact structure of how it was defined.
Hmm. Okay.
So that's just good to know, Varnam.
But this is only uh, limited to the contents proc, or like
Yeah. Pro contents. Yes, this is only applicable for
mm-hmm.
pro contents. So,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
could you clarify your question? Because
Yeah,
you,
exactly. That was my question. Like,
yeah,
is it
you can
just?
also, let's say this is not a SAS data set.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's say this was a lib name. Um, this was a SQL. Let's say this is a MS SQL table. All right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and let's say this is the database that's been defined using this lib name.
Mm-hmm.
This has been introduced to SAS using this lib name. All right. So it could be any other server, any other schema name, server name, database name, schema name, user ID, password, and whatever mode of access. You
Mm-hmm.
specify whatever is needed in the lib name, just like
Mm-hmm.
what we did here. This was a simple lib name, but
Mm-hmm.
if it's a SQL related, you will be providing database name, schema name, and possibly user ID, password
User
too
ID
to
password.
connect to
Mm-hmm.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something else. So
Mm-hmm.
once you do that, you can also provide a proc content statement to read the metadata of that table in this database schema.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, in the results,
Mm-hmm.
these you probably won't have it. Well, sometimes you might have it, but I would say no. You'll have nulls here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you will have these things. You'll
Mm-hmm.
know what the columns are and tables, the table names are, and then the column names and the data types and the size and etc. as it is
Mm-hmm.
defined in SQL.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also use that in case of any lib name, I should say, any lib name and a dataset name or table name, you can use
Mm-hmm.
that syntax,
Mm-hmm.
not only a SAS dataset.
Right.
But you cannot use for Excel or like a text file or a delimited file.
Mm-hmm.
No, you cannot use that. It has
Mm-hmm.
to be defined to SAS as a lib name.
Okay. So maybe I can give an example. So if I just have one SQL table that I just imported in SAS, and so when it is there in SAS, but it is not sorted uh, in ascending order. Like,
Are you Are you talking about the data or are you talking about the metadata?
Oh, I'm talking about the data. I see, I see. Oh, this is, and so this is just related to the metadata, not data.
Yes, this is
Oh,
just
oh, I see.
related to the
Oh, okay.
metadata.
Yes. Okay. I see. I got confused. Okay. Yeah.
So you are wanting to sort the data?
Yeah. So I was, so yeah, because I was thinking that, yeah, it doesn't automatically sort. There is a way that you have to use a code to sort it, right? Like the
Yes,
meta.
you have
Yeah.
to you should know
Mm.
what to sort it by, right? I mean,
Yes.
you need to
Yes.
know the columns that you need to sort it by,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to use a proc. There's a proc specially to sort the data, sort,
Mm-hmm.
proc sort, and
Oh, I see. Yeah.
but first, I mean, if it's a SQL table, you just but you will not write it back to SQL, right? I mean, you would process it within SAS. That's what you want to do.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
because you might have access issues if you try to write back to SQL
Mm-hmm.
um, once you sort it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you have privileges, you might be able to write it, but I would
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, you would bring it into SAS in a data step, and then you would sort it by whatever key you need to. And again,
Mm-hmm.
there comes options like duplicates. What do you do with the duplicates? You would get rid of them, or duplicate keys. If it's a simple compound key, and do you want to save the duplicates in another data set? All those options come in there.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to create another a different output, or you want to overwrite the existing output? So you can also do that. And do you want to uh, some of the options that you would encounter is like, what do you want to do when you sort it? Are you just sorting it, or are you like dropping some of the columns and you want to only keep some columns? And the other option would be to, do you want to keep those columns or whatever you're keeping? Do you want to keep them as is, or do you want to just rename some of those? Uh, and Yeah, you got several options. I mean, it gives you the flexibility to do many things when you
Mm-hmm.
sort, not just sort, but when you sort, what else do you want to do? You can do it at the same time. You don't have to do it in a separate data set. You can just do it as part of the sort. A lot of things you can do there too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, it gives you more flexibility. That's one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be with the data. But this is here we are dealing only with the
Mm-hmm.
metadata, and with the
Yeah.
dictionary we would do the same thing. Just the metadata. There's
Mm-hmm.
We don't do anything with the data.
Okay.
So okay, uh, chapter one. Uh, Processing. Okay. We did not do a set. So
Mm-hmm.
we did create one. So we have this here. So let's see. We have data my SAS dat dot um, jam. Let's say salad, and we have my SAS. So let's do a set. So what this does, so this one, it it tells, what this does, right? The first line,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it tells SAS to go to this libref library name, and it says, hey, I'm going to create a data set
Mm-hmm.
because there's a period right here, right? You know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to take whatever comes after that, and that's going to be the name of the SAS data set that's going to be created right
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next line, we're introducing this new word called set, new keyword. What it tells SAS is that, hey, I'm going to create this data set, but I'm going to use this as the input. And whatever I do after that, before the run statement, and you're going to have to process everything, and then you're going to write into this data set.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we are, you know what this is? This is again the library reference, libref,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and this is the delimiter for the permanent SAS data set, and this is a SAS data set name. It's located in this library.
Mm-hmm.
So it's bringing it in. There's no statement after that. All you have is a run statement.
Mm-hmm.
And it just basically makes a copy of
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
in this name.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this will exist after this step executes, and this will also execute. This does not
Mm-hmm.
delete this
Mm-hmm.
or overwrite it. It just
Oh.
remains there. It just reads it
Mm-hmm.
and writes into this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a set. Now you might ask, what if let's say I take 4 and 1, right? So I take 4 and then I have 1 here. So what if I have a run statement here, and then if I have another data step here, and that's called jam2, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the 4 and the 1. I'll take these two first. Actually, I need this. Copy that. Put that in here. Put that in here. And I put that in here. So I have two different steps now.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one has 5, 2, and 3. The second one has 4 and 1. And I run these two. There's the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the second one, the jam2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has one observations and two variables, which is 4 and 5, 4 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
If I go here, instead of jam, I also want to say, um, remember this, these are different names. They're not the same name. So 5, 2, and 3, 4, 1. And if I want to say set, if I do this, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
setting one data set, but I'm setting two data sets.
Mm-hmm.
Jam only has 5, 2, and 3, and
Mm-hmm.
Jam2 has 4 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
So if I run this data step, you're going to have one observation from here, one observation from here. Now the output has two observations and 5 variables. So if you look
Mm-hmm.
at the data, okay, that doesn't look good. So let me do, all right, you see what happened here, right? So
Mm-hmm.
4 and 1,
Mm-hmm.
they're blank for the first one because they came from the Jam data set. Pam and
Mm-hmm.
Sam are from Jam2.
Mm-hmm.
And it filled it with blanks for 5, 2, and 3, which are not part of Jam2.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
It just
separate.
combines the two data sets.
Yep, there are two records, one record from here, the other one, well, observation in this case, one observation from here, second
Mm-hmm.
observation from here. They combine as two records, but the blanks for the, um, it's like doing like a outer join, but
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Without any no, that's pretty, yeah, in SQL, that's what I was thinking. In SQL, we'll have to write so many lines to get this thing done.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no key used to combine those. But
Yes.
if there are common keys, then you would ask, hey, what would happen if there are common keys?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it would. So if uh, it will, if we don't combine them using the key, then the common variables are going to be populated with the keys, like like ID is 100, ID 200. They'll be
Mm-hmm.
populated, but if there is 100 here and 100 here,
Mm-hmm.
if we are simply setting, this is going to be the key decider at that point. If you do a set, it's like it's in terms of SQL, you can say it's going to be like a union.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do anything more than that. It just does a union, except
Mm-hmm.
it keeps the variables separate. But if it's a union in SQL, first of all, you would have an issue because
The column names are all different.
not
Yeah.
only that, you have different number of columns.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
One has
Yes.
three, the other one has two. That's going to be a problem. But let's
Mm-hmm.
say both of them have three and three.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a union, it's just not going to care what it's called. It's just going to just set it together, stack
Right.
them up. But
Mm-hmm.
here, it will not stack them up. It will do this. It will populate the non-overlapping variables with blanks, just like this. That's the
Mm-hmm.
difference between SQL and SAS in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you, so while setting, I just talked to you a minute ago about the sort, different options that you would have in sort. So you would have options to rename variables in this, rename variables in this, and then you can fine tune them to
Mm-hmm.
line up in silos, like with the same names. You can, you have these, what did we do? Split it up. Yeah, we split up 5, 2, 3, and then 4, 1, right? You can probably get rid of 1, and then you can rename this to 4 and this to 1 and make it look alike.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have two records and two variables and
Mm-hmm.
one key, and they'll be populated. We can try those
Okay.
examples, but I'm just
Mm-hmm.
giving an example, just a high level idea of what's going to happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But uh, uh, so I think for what else do they have? Oh, yeah, you already know this, but it's a highlighter here. E- Every SAS statement has to have a semicolon at the end. It has to
Mm-hmm.
end with a semicolon. Otherwise,
Okay.
well, there's one exception though. See this?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to have a semicolon. When you call a macro, it doesn't.
Okay.
Of course, they didn't say that here, but I'm just telling you. In
Mm-hmm.
this chapter, they're not getting into that part of the macro part of the code. It just, well, they're careful. It says, well, they say um, a SAS statement has two important characteristics. It usually begins with a SAS keyword, okay, which is fine. The
Mm-hmm.
second bullet point is it always ends with a semicolon. Now, I would argue, is this a SAS statement or not? It is SAS code. It doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
end with a semicolon.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't say that there, but I think they figured they'll learn that later. Um, Layout. I think we have covered many things in the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Processing SAS programs. Yeah, if you once you once you go through this, if you have any
Mm-hmm.
questions, if something's not clear, we can
Mm-hmm.
look through again.
Yeah.
You know how to read the log.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it also tells you the time, which we did not talk about, but see that?
Mm-hmm.
Tells
Yeah.
you the time, and also it tells you the CPU time. I don't know what the difference between this and this, like
Mm-hmm.
user CPU and system CPU. Okay. Well, I mean, if it's like fractions of seconds, we don't care about it. If this turns out to become like, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and an hour, then
Mm-hmm.
that's of interest. And there are some processes, they have to take, hours together, but there's nothing much you could do. But
Mm-hmm.
those are carefully monitored.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how are we like? How are we going to proceed with this with the course? Like, is it going to be like I would once as soon as I get the book, if I start studying?
Yeah, you could
Uh,
go as fast as you like. I'm flexible. So you want me to skip things, I can skip. You want me to cover specific things, I can cover. Otherwise, you want to read everything and then just ask me questions, I can do that. So any way you
mhm,
like, whatever you want. My goal is to have you certified in, like, you know, however fast you want to get certified. So I was
mhm,
thinking you cover one day, one chapter. In 22
mhm,
days, you should be done with the book. And after that,
mhm,
maybe a week or two, just practice. And then you should be
mhm.
able to take the exam in 45 days
Right.
and you'll be certified.
So, so when you say one day, one, that means in one class, are we doing one chapter?
Um, Again, I mean, I don't want to overwhelm you, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, uh, I would, I don't want to lose you at any point. I would like you to stay with me all the way. And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm losing you, I would like you to stop me right away.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, otherwise, it'll be difficult for you. I don't want it to be
Mm-hmm.
difficult for you. I mean, that's one reason I'm here. If you if you want to take it tough, you could just read everything by yourself and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to make it easy and make it faster. That's the way I felt. And based on what we went today, how do you
Mm-hmm.
feel? Like, do you feel like we're too slow, too fast, just the right pace, or I lost you here and there in different places? Or
And
how do
this
you
is,
feel?
I mean, no, the pace is right, but for me, like, unless I am typing the code on my own,
Remember what
um,
I told you when we spoke the other day?
mm-hmm,
After I wrap up, I
mm-hmm,
need you to spend at least an
mm-hmm,
hour, maybe 2 hours. 2 hours would be
mm-hmm,
great. At
mm-hmm,
least an hour trying out everything that we discussed. And
mm-hmm,
I need you to be comfortable with what we discussed. You should be
mm-hmm,
able to, when we talk about something, you should be able to imagine, okay, that's going to be the code. That's how it's going to look like. And you should be
mm-hmm,
able to, like, subsequently type after a few classes, you'll be able to type
mm-hmm.
right away.
Okay.
But the bottom line is you have to practice after I do it. I mean, not with the intention of, oh, I'm going to be working on this after this project, like, or after this 45 days. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to be practicing to get comfortable. So when there is a question, you know exactly how the code will look like and what would have happened. You'll be able to answer that right away. So
So,
the
so when you
question
say question, do you mean in the
exam
certification, in the exam?
exam.
Also, is it exam? Is the exam tough?
Um, if you ask me, it's easy. Like, it's like 100 questions. You're supposed to score like 70 or 75, something like that, to pass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they give you like, I would like to say 2 hours. It used to be 2 hours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If you so 100 questions, if it's more than, actually, uh, I don't know if it's 100 questions. So, but anyway, let's take 100 questions. It should only take, I mean, if you are fully prepared, there will be one or two questions. They'll throw a
Mm-hmm.
curveball which you have never seen, never heard of. Don't worry
Mm-hmm.
about that. One or two questions, they will always come up with something to surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
Just ignore those. The good news
Mm-hmm.
is it's all multiple choice, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
just select one of them. Do not skip a question. Just select one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
one or two questions, don't worry. You will not,
Mhm.
probably you'll not know, and
Mhm.
you can leave them for tasks, and the
Mhm.
remaining you'll be able to get through comfortably. It is not hard at all. It is easy.
Mhm.
It's just that if you work on it a little bit, you will
Mhm.
go at ease.
Okay.
Otherwise, you might always have a stress. Oh, what did I do? I didn't practice. I don't know how the log would appear. If you just run those simple syntax, small things that we talk about
Mhm.
every time we meet, you just
Mhm.
practice everything that we do in the 1 or 2
Mhm.
days, whatever
Mhm.
it takes for you. You'll be
Mhm.
very comfortable. You won't have a problem. It is an easy exam. And you will not have to sit there full time. You will
Mhm.
probably be able to complete it
Mhm.
in less time, actually. Like
Mhm.
in an hour, 15 minutes, maybe an hour, 30 minutes, you will probably
Mhm.
finish everything. And there's only so much you can go back and look at the objective type questions. So you'll be
Mhm.
confident and you can just get out. It's not hard. I mean,
Mhm.
the advanced exam, yes, that is kind of hard, but
Mhm.
base is really easy.
So, I mean, let me just put it this way. So, I mean, I am personally looking for, I mean, certification definitely is a goal,
Okay.
but yes, but then I'm looking to, like, like, if you think about it in a different angle, what if I just want to, like, to be able to do coding in SAS? Like,
Just
if we not look at the certification, what if we just look at the coding part?
again,
So,
the practice
mhm,
that I suggested, that's going to
mhm,
help you. That's going to be big time. That's going to help you big.
mhm,
So that's when actually practicing will be even more important because you're not studying for the exam. You're
mhm,
you're going to use it to work. So you
mhm,
really need to know what's going to happen. How to
mhm,
code for to
mhm,
get this result. How to code to get that result. So if I
mhm,
throw you a question, you should be able
mhm,
to tell me how you're going to
mhm,
code it and then actually
mhm,
show it.
mhm.
So you'll get that if you practice everything that we discuss.
Right, right, right.
You'll get that. I have no question about that. You just go over, and
Mhm,
and besides, you got the recording. So now
mhm,
my question is, um, how do I send this to you? You know what? Next time, maybe I'll have you host the Zoom call so you can
mhm,
record it right away, and it
mhm.
will end up on your computer. I don't have to send you anything.
Right, right, right. I
So next
see.
time you
Mhm,
start the call and you keep
mhm,
it there.
mhm,
Um, yeah, and maybe you can code it too next time. We'll go over this, and that way you'll
mhm,
feel like you've actually done something,
mhm,
and you would have encountered some situations. Hey, what do I do? And I'm having, I'll
mhm.
be able to see it too, what's happening.
Right, right,
So
right.
maybe could do
Mhm.
that. And first, try to install that and see if get it to work.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that
It
I have
should,
to get first.
yeah, it
Mhm,
should exactly look like what I have here. The
mhm,
GUI is exactly the same, and it's much easier
mhm,
actually. Um,
mhm,
so you're thinking that we're good with the speed, and actually we have kind of covered the first chapter. Um,
mhm,
I don't think they call it the descriptor, but once you look at you have, we have covered the missing ones. You
mhm.
already know the rows, data sets, and everything. So observations, variables, attributes.
So
Okay,
like
we didn't
it.
talk about the formats, but I think that's the only thing. But other than that, we talked about the length, name, type,
Mhm.
but there's nothing much. Format is the only format and label.
Okay.
That's
So
it.
what if some student comes to you and they're not interested in the certification, but they just want to learn how to code? Like how much? Because like I really did not think about it, but now I'm wondering that if we are doing 25 chapters, so if we are doing
No,
25,
22.
22, okay, and
Yep.
so we'll be doing 22 lessons
Okay.
minimum. Yeah.
We don't have to. We don't have to. You can cut it short anytime you feel like you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
I just said 22 chapters, and that's why I said if you want me to skip some things, let me know what to skip. And
Mm-hmm.
right now you don't have a book, but once you get the book, you'll
Mm-hmm.
know. Hey, I don't want to read this chapter. I want to skip this chapter. Yeah, just tell me, and we'll work on the remaining
Yes.
chapters.
So yeah, I think so. I mean, then yeah, then I was just thinking about how much it's going to cost me.
Okay.
So yeah, so I was thinking if it's like what if you just teach me the important just the important concepts that you think that I should know for SAS, just the basics. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think we started doing with that, doing that,
Yeah.
which is like if you, I mean, you already know SQL, so you're not new to computers. You
Mm-hmm.
already know SQL and you know how to
Mm-hmm.
develop SQL code and you know the joins and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able
Mm-hmm.
to relate a lot of things in the SQL world to
Mm-hmm.
what we're going through here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say,
like for instance, like the macro part, I mean, just an example. So like what if, like, I know that macros are an important part, so what if we cover that topic, or like only the important topics that I need, that would make me comfortable in SAS coding, like.
um, okay, so do you have questions that you like to get answers to? Maybe
um
that's what you're looking for. If you are,
mm-hmm.
um, or do you have a problem that you don't know the answer to, like, or you don't know how to deal with? Maybe we can
So
start there. Maybe we
yeah,
can.
so I was telling you about the project at work, but yeah, I'm honestly just not comfortable with that the remote desktop scene.
Okay, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, because yeah, that I don't think it would be right of
Okay,
me to do
so
that. Yeah.
if you think of SAS, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
um, knowing the concept of a SAS data set and then knowing the attributes, the metadata, which you already know now. I would say you would need to know how to bring it in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, do some transformations and
Yeah.
merges you definitely need to know. And then
Mm-hmm.
some of the some of the important procs, the proc free,
Mm-hmm.
at least the ones that are going to be useful for you. So if you can make a list of the okay, so yeah, if you can make a list of things that you do,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it'll directly help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say definitely merge, sort,
Mm-hmm.
some date manipulations because you need to know that, and string
Mm-hmm.
manipulations. But other than that, um, you would a lot of things. I would say you need to start looking at the logs. That's where
Mm-hmm.
you would really learn what's happening behind the scenes.
Right,
All we are
right.
going through is just code and
Mm-hmm.
but once you understand what's happening behind the scenes, once you start looking at
Mm-hmm.
the logs more and try to make sense of what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Debugging is where you'll gain speed on what's wrong with the code or whatnot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, we can do mergers. We can do different types of mergers,
Mm-hmm.
and we have sample datasets in SAS help,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do some procs if you would like,
Mm-hmm.
and then after
Mm-hmm.
that I can ask you to ask me questions and we can take it from there if that
Mm-hmm.
helps, because we don't have to meet 22 times or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
you can you can drive on where you want to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I don't know, you said you create some reports too, so we can try to create some reports like ODS or HTML outputs,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we can look at formats. You need to know how formats are used.
Yes, the formatting. Mm-hmm.
Um, Combining SAS data sets and combining, see, one thing we cannot do here, but we
Mm-hmm.
can simulate, and we can say, oh, this is how it will look like. We can
Mm-hmm.
pretend one is a SQL, one is a SAS data set, and then we can
Mm-hmm.
merge, and we can also do SQL joins here and see how
Mm-hmm.
this is how it's going to be, but you can actually try it at your work.
Right, right. Okay.
Uh, but other
Mm-hmm.
than that, and then loops, do loops, and nested if
Yeah.
statements,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, macros, renaming variables, combining processing data sets again. Uh, that's pretty much what I would say. Data steps and proc steps. Once you master that,
Mm-hmm.
there's not much you need to. You can learn as you go the other things. I wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing SQL for so many years, but still, I still end up having to use Google sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
you would
yeah,
Google's your friend actually. I use it all the
yeah,
time too.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like,
Yeah, maybe,
um,
I don't know. So we can do that, and then if you have any specific areas that you'd like to cover, we can do that.
mm-hmm,
Um, and that can also, once you get the book, you can start studying on yourself too, and just ask me questions if you ever need any
mm-hmm,
help. But otherwise,
yeah.
you should be good to go
Yeah, yeah. I think now that I think of it, I think my requirement would be that maybe I just did not put it right.
to actually
That to be
get
able to
get your hands dirty.
code. Yeah,
Get your hands
exactly.
dirty.
Because
Okay.
now that I'm thinking about this, looking at this book, yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that I really just to start, just make start working on it. I really don't need to know all this. I mean, I eventually, as I keep going, I'm going to learn this.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I should just be able to like write my own code. And like you said, the loops, which yeah, again are important, the procs. So yeah, whatever, like if you think those things, I mean, maybe we can do two more classes, and you think that should be enough just to cover just to cover the things that we discussed.
Yeah, the ones that we discussed, we can just cover them. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe for next time, we can do the what did you want to say? The loops,
Yeah, the
if
loops,
statements,
the
date
loops,
functions, string functions, right?
the macros. Yeah.
We'll do macros at the end because
Mm-hmm.
you need to know the language to be able to include it in the macros. So I just gave
Okay.
an intro,
Mm-hmm.
but if you have a scenario
Mm-hmm.
where you could take this macro and apply it,
Mm-hmm.
just bring the scenario, what you would
Okay.
need, and we
Mm-hmm.
can try to simulate that here. And
Mm-hmm.
you could probably also, you know, you can get two things in one, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll also learn it, and you'll be able to take it, just lift and shift and apply it at your work.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So and if you like, what you can do is, if if you think of something that, hey, I want to talk about this in the next class, just
Mm-hmm.
send me a list of things so we
Mm-hmm.
can plan for it. If you have 20 points, like, at least we'll cover, whatever is possible in that time, and however fast we can go.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
if you got it, just say, okay, let's go to the next one, and we'll go to the next one.
Okay. Okay.
We don't need to do examples or anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
one is sufficient. That's enough. We can skip
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So yeah, I will look at that book and I'll go through because yeah, because I don't know
Again,
what
I mean,
all is
it
there.
looks like you
Yeah.
don't even have to buy that book, because
Mm-hmm.
if your focus is on work, if you want to get your hands dirty,
Mm-hmm.
all you need is SAS Studio, and the PDFs are free. The manuals are free, but more than the manuals, you'll be using Google, and
Mm-hmm.
join SAS community. Right?
Okay.
There's something called SAS community, and you can post your questions there too. They'll answer. There are
Mm-hmm.
people who are really good. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they are extremely good, and they've been all their life they've done nothing but SAS. There are people like that. They
Mm-hmm.
love to answer too. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a problem, just post it there, and
Mm-hmm.
they will answer to you. So
Okay.
that's really good.
Okay.
And if you have a list of items, just
Mm-hmm.
send them over and say, hey, these are the things that I would like to cover. But we'll of course do the functions and um, data steps, the next
Mm-hmm.
next one, and then we'll do the mergers as well. I think
Mm-hmm.
those are the important ones that you
Mm-hmm.
would very often use in almost every program.
Mm-hmm.
And then anything else that you need, we'll do that. We don't need to go in detail on what's needed in the book. So actually, you don't
Yeah.
even need to buy the book then. So you'll save like $100 or something. This is an expensive book.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking to getting it from the library, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But yeah. So I think for now, let me just yeah, work with that. That just to be able to write code.
Okay.
Yeah, myself. So, and I'll definitely get the book and start to read, look at some examples, and then yeah, what we did today, I'll
Okay.
try to redo it myself. Okay. So yeah, I'll message and I'll let you know when we can schedule the next class.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right
Sounds like a
then.
plan. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you
All
so
right. No
much.
problem. Take care.
You too. Bye bye. Good
Bye bye.
night.